Hello and welcome to Go To Tech Reviews. Today we are going to take a look at a new gaming case from Rosewill called the Orbit Z1 with emphasis on style, function, and of course RGB LEDs. The Rosewill Orbit Z1 is a mid-tower ATX case stylized with the quote, gamer's aesthetic, complete with an RGB LED controller and lit accents and fans. While the style may not be to everyone's taste, I think it looks fantastic, and at a current price of $65 US, it offers an excellent value. Let's start by taking off the plexi-windowed side panel that has two thumb screws that are unfortunately not of the retainable type. The side comes off easily, and like most plexi-windowed side panels, is a little on the flimsy side. Once removed, the open interior is revealed with lots of space for various types of components. The case supports mini ITX, micro ATX, and standard ATX motherboards. Only 6 of the 9 ATX mounts are pre-installed, however, so if you're installing an ATX motherboard that requires 9 screws, you'll need to add the other 3 mounts. Unfortunately, Rosewill did not include the tool that makes this easier, as I have seen with other cases. Also note there are 2 different sets of cutouts depending on your motherboard's size. Rubber grommets would have been nice, but given the price point, this is okay. The front has mounting for 2 optional 5¼ inch drives and room for a 240mm radiator or 220mm fans. This also allows rooms for graphics cards up to 380mm long. I really like that they were able to include a power supply shroud, and this really helps in an overall cleaner aesthetic. Incorporated into the shroud and on the upper interior of the case are 2 LED strips that are connected to the internal LED controller, which can be controlled from the front. Not only are there 2 LED strips on the interior, but Rosewill has also included 2 120mm RGB LED fans which are connected to the RGB LED and fan controller on the back side of the case. Coming to the rear side panel, we also have 2 thumb screws, also unretainable, that allow us to remove the side panel. Take note of the extra bulge in the side panel, as this allows for much easier cable management in the end. Looking at the backside of the motherboard tray, the first thing that stands out is the large CPU cutout, which makes CPU cooler installation very easy. The next thing you'll notice is the fan and RGB controller for the case, which allows room for plenty of expansion. Another thing to mention is the abundance of cables from the RGB LED components and fan headers, as well as a Molex connector to power the controller itself, unfortunately. You'll notice that there doesn't seem to be a lot of room for cable management, and you'd be correct. However, the bulge in the side panel that I mentioned earlier helps alleviate this greatly. It is rather spacious under the PSU shroud, which can accommodate practically any ATX power supply with room to spare. To the left, there is a bay for 3 3.5 inch drives or 2.5 inch drives. However, there is not any toolless sleds or any other carriers, but again, for this price point, this is okay. The oddest part of the case is the 2.5 inch drive mounts on the back, as they look like they would go horizontally in line with the cutouts, but the holes actually line up vertically, which makes it kind of awkward when mounting the 2.5 inch drives. So just be aware of this oddity when considering this case. The bottom has tall rubber feet to allow breathability for the power supply, which is covered by a small filter, but I would have preferred an easier mounting for the filter, however. This implementation is not my favorite, but it gets the job done. The top 120mm fan exhaust port has a magnetic filter and is very nice quality. Note that there is not enough vertical clearance from the motherboard for anything other than a fan, so no radiator support on top. One of my favorite standout features of the Orbit Z1 is the front panel. I love the RGB LED lights in the front pattern and surrounding border. This is for those of you who want an in-your-face gaming RGB LED aesthetic. Personally, I love it, but it's not for everyone. The front is easily removed, but be careful again to not pull too hard, as the cabling for the case is connected here and cannot be fully removed. The front can house a 240mm radiator, but do note that if you are mounting fans, that there is no dust filter, which is a small bummer. Taking one last look around the back, we can see a mounting for a single 120mm exhaust fan, I/O port, and 7 PCIe expansion ports, and mounting for a standard ATX power supply. Finally, up top we have the I/O, which includes a power button, activity LEDs, mic and headphone jacks, a single USB 2.0 port, 2 USB 3.0 ports, 2 fan controllers, which are already attached to the included 120mm fans, and an LED button to control the entire case's LED profile. Let's take a quick look at the build we will be doing in the Orbit Z1. We've got the Asus Z170 Pro gaming motherboard with the Intel G4600 Pentium CPU. Stay tuned for further tests on this, along with 16GB of Ballistics Elite DDR4 memory. We're also using an EVGA GTX 960 GPU for 1080p gaming, and I was also waiting for this EVGA 450BT power supply to come in, which I got for a steal for $10 after mail-in rebate. Let's go ahead and put this bad boy together. Before we get to the conclusion on the Orbit Z1, I wanted to show off the different RGB LED modes. First we have Transition Mode, which cycles smoothly between all the available colors. Next we have Breathing Mode, which will breathe between the different colors that are available. Then we have Static Mode, in which you can have a solid color, and finally there is a Shuffle Mode, which is a crazy psychedelic light show of all the colors. This can also be set to off if RGB LEDs ain't your thing, in which I wouldn't recommend this case if this is your default mode. Besides a couple minor quirks like the 2.5-inch drive mounts on the back, it was a quick and painless build. The case is very beginner friendly and is stylized to the hilt where you can quote RGB all the things. While it may not have tempered glass or other creature comforts, like retainable thumb screws and rubber grommets, it hits a solid budget price point with enough room for future expandability. I highly recommend this case if you're wanting that gamer aesthetic and RGB LED control on a budget. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter at GoToTechReviews for more up-to-date news and happenings, and we'll catch you in the next video.